Welcome class 10. Let's continue again new topic in the same chapter, that is nervous system, where we are learning about the eye. So far we have completed about the internal structure of eye. Now we will try to understand how do we see the object. So as we know that the eye is the organ which helps us to see the object, but how do we see the object? Okay, that we are going to understand here under this topic. How do we see the objects? Now what happens here, you need to understand that the ray of light first enters into the conjunctiva, then into the cornea, then again aqueous humor, then through the pupil. Okay, it reaches the lens converges the ray of light, and finally the ray of light meets at yellow spot. Okay, yellow spot. Okay, at the yellow spot. Then the retinal cell get stimulated by this light. Okay, or the image which is formed on the retina. Okay, stimulates the retinal cell like rod cell and cone cell. Okay, to produce the nerve impulse. That nerve impulse is carried by the nerve fiber called optic nerve. Okay, optic nerve usually carries the nerve impulse from the eye to the brain, particularly to the cerebrum. Okay, and again you need to understand here that the image which is formed by the lens on the retina is always real and inverted. Okay, because the ray of light image has been formed by the actual intersection of light. So that is why it is real, at the same time it is inverted. But when it is taken to the brain interprets it. Whenever the brain interprets the image will be upright, okay, not inverted. So that is why we see the object as it is, not inverted. But on the retina, the image form is always inverted. Okay, so that is there. So here sometimes the pathway is asked. Okay, first conjunctiva, then after that cornea, then after that aqueous humor, then after that pupil, then lens, then vitreous humor, then yellow spot or retina. Okay, then after that it is carried by the optic nerve to the brain for the interpretation. Then the image of the object is interpreted by the brain. So this is how we are able to see the object. Then after that comes the next topic, that is accommodation of eye. First we require to define accommodation of eye. If you are asked what do you understand by accommodation of eye, then you need to say that the process of changing the focus of the lens to view the nearby and distant object is called accommodation of the eye. Now what are the changes that takes place inside the eye? Okay, when we view the nearby objects and far away object or distant object. Okay, that is what we call accommodation of the eye. Okay, now how many different changes that takes place when you view the distant vision? Okay, distant object, that is for distant vision. What happens is that, as I have already explained to you, ciliary muscle, suspensory ligament and lens, they play a vital role. Okay, important role in focusing. Okay, the ray of light coming from the object into the retina. Now for this what they do is that, as we know that from the far away object always the parallel beam of ray comes. Okay, which is required, like they are not required to converge much. So that is why the lens usually remains thin. Okay, thin and flat. Now see how many changes occurs here. The ciliary muscles, the circular muscles which are present in the ciliary body, they relax whenever we are viewing the distant object. And about the suspensory ligament, they get stretched. As the suspensory ligament is stretched from both the sides, it pulls the lens from both the sides. As a result, the lens becomes thin and flat. Okay, so this happens when we view the distant object. Then again, when we view the nearby object, from the nearby object always divergent beam of ray usually comes. Okay, and it has to be converged to a greater extent. So that is why lens required to be very thick and more curved. Okay, so this is usually brought about by again ciliary muscles and suspensory ligament. Now in this case, what happens? The ciliary muscles get stretched, comes into tension. Okay, but the suspensory ligament remains relaxed. As a result, the lens becomes thick and more curved. Okay, and more bending of light takes place. Okay, so this thing happens when we view the nearby object and distant object. Now we'll discuss the next topic, that is light and dark adaptation. In a very brief way, we discussed before that when we enter the dark room, then what happens is that, like suppose when you enter into a cinema hall, okay, which is very dark, in the beginning you don't be able to see who is sitting beside you, but after some time what happens, you are able to see the person sitting beside you. This is mainly because of the pigment that is present in the sensitive cells of the retina, like rod cells. Now see what is meant by this dark adaptation. Dark adaptation is actually the adaptation of the eye to see the object in dark place or in dim light. Okay, so whenever we enter into the dark place, then what happens is that rhodopsin, which is the pigment present in rod cells, okay, are regenerated. Okay, they are generated. Then again, the pupil usually dilates so that as much as possible light enters into the eye. So these are the changes which occurs during dark adaptation. Then in light adaptation is the adaptation of the eye to view the object in bright light. Okay, so when you come out of the cinema hall outside in bright light, then in the beginning you won't be able to see for some time. Okay, now what happens during this time is that whatever the rhodopsin that has been generated, okay, they are all bleached out. Okay, and the pupil, what happens, it becomes smaller so that less amount of light enters into the eye. So these changes usually takes place during light and dark adaptation. So just now we have completed the topic like how do we see the object, and then after that accommodation of the eye, then light and dark adaptation. Then after that we'll discuss about, in the next video we'll discuss about the defects of the eye, okay, and the diseases of the eye. In this video this much, student. Thank you.